A 340 și 7 with re. Security footage catches a woman stumbling through the loading dock of Mercy General Hospital in Ashford. Her shoes are duct taped together. Her uniform is soaked through with sweat. She's been walking for 4 hours straight through streets. Most people wouldn't drive through in daylight. When Officer Daniel Cross pulls up beside her, 20 minutes later, his first thought is drugs or alcohol. His second thought, when she turns to face him with eyes that are exhausted but completely clear, is that something is very, very wrong. She's not fleeing a crime scene. She's not running from an abuser. She's trying to get to work. And when he asks why she's out here alone in the dark, her answer stops him cold. Because if I'm late again, I lose everything. Stay with me until the end of this story. If it moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey can reach. The call came in as a welfare check. Possible distressed pedestrian on Harlow Avenue. Moving erratically. Officer Daniel Cross had been patrolling the east side of Ashford for 6 years. And he knew what 4 a.m. looked like in this part of town. Empty streets, closed storefronts, the occasional drunk stumbling out of Murphy's bar. This wasn't that. The woman was walking with purpose, even though her gait was uneven. One shoe had split open at the sole, held together with silver tape that caught the streetlight. Her hospital scrubs faded blue. The kind that had been washed 1,000 times were dark with sweat despite the October chill. She kept her head down, arms swinging in rhythm, like she was counting steps. Daniel rolled down his window. "Ma'am, you all right?" She didn't stop, didn't even look up. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stop for a second." This time, but only barely. When she turned her head, her face was drawn tight, every muscle locked in place. Not hostile, not afraid, just tired in a way that went deeper than one sleepless night. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "I'm on my way to work." Daniel glanced at the clock on his dashboard. "It's 4 in the morning. I know what time it is." "You walking to Mercy General." A pause, then a stiff nod. "That's 7 miles from here." "I know." Daniel put the car in park and stepped out. The woman, mid-30s. Dark hair pulled back in a bun that was coming loose. Took a step back. Not fear. Wariness. Like she'd learned a long time ago that help came with conditions. "How long you been walking?" he asked. "A while." "Where'd you start home?" "And where's home?" She hesitated. Bridgeport Apartments. Daniel did the math in his head. Bridgeport to Mercy General. 12 miles. Maybe more. If she didn't know the shortcuts. "You've been walking since midnight." "Around then?" Why her jaw tightened. "Because my car broke down 3 weeks ago and I can't afford to fix it. Because the bus doesn't run this early. Because I've already been written up twice for being late, and if it happens again, I'm done." "Is that enough? Or do you need my social security number too?" Daniel held up both hands. "Hey, I'm not trying to jam you up. I'm trying to help. I don't need help. I need to get to work. Let me give you a ride." "No, thank you." "Mom, it's not safe out here. I've been doing this for 3 weeks. I'm fine." By the time they reached Mercy General, the sky was starting to lighten. Daniel watched her disappear through the service entrance, then sat in the parking lot for another 10 minutes, trying to figure out what the hell he'd just witnessed. Inside the hospital, Leah Carter clocked in at 5:58 a.m., 2 minutes to spare. Her supervisor, a wiry woman named Rita Moss, who wore her reading glasses on a chain and her judgment on her face, glanced at the timestamp and sniffed. "Cutting it close again." "I'm on time," Leah said quietly. "Barely." Leah didn't respond. She grabbed her cleaning cart mop, bucket, disinfectant spray, trash bags, and headed for the third floor. Her feet were screaming. Her lower back had locked up somewhere around mile 8. But she kept moving, because stopping meant thinking. And thinking meant feeling. And feeling meant falling apart. She cleaned rooms with the kind of efficiency that came from repetition. Wiped down surfaces. Empty trash. Mop floors. Moved to the next room. The nurses barely acknowledged her. The doctors walked past like she was part of the furniture. A few patients said thank you. Most didn't. B'jeshinj a.m. She'd finished the third floor and moved to the second. That's when she ran into Marcus. Marcus Webb was one of the ER nurses. A tall guy in his 40s who always looked slightly frazzled and always had a kind word. He was one of the few people in the hospital who treated Leah like she was visible. "Morning, Leah," he said, balancing a tray of coffee cups. "Morning. You look beat." "Rough night, long walk," she said without thinking. Marcus paused. "Walk." She realized her mistake too late. "Just woke up early. You know how it is." He studied her for a second, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know how it is." He didn't push, and she was grateful for that. She finished mopping the hallway and moved to the next wing, where Dr. Paul Hendricks was making rounds with a group of residents. Hendricks was in his 50s, silver-haired and perpetually impatient. He had the kind of authority that filled a room and the kind of ego that demanded it. When he saw Leah's cart blocking the hallway, he stopped short. "Excuse me," he said, not bothering to look at her. "Can you move that?" Leah grabbed the cart and pulled it to the side. "Thank you," he said, in a tone that meant the opposite. Then, to the residents' time management. "People, every second counts." One of the residents, a younger woman with nervous eyes, glanced at Leah and offered a small, apologetic smile. Leah didn't return it. She just kept working. By noon, her shift was half over and her body was running on fumes. She took her lunch break in the basement, a 15-minute window where she ate a peanut butter sandwich and drank water from a fountain because the vending machines were too expensive. Then she went back upstairs and kept cleaning. Adoipe M. Rita found her in the stairwell. "Carter, I need you to cover the 4th floor. Jenny called in sick. I already did the 3rd and 2nd. And now you're doing the 4th. That a problem." Leah's knees were throbbing. Her shoulders felt like they were filled with broken glass. But she said, "No maum," because what else could she say? Rita walked away without another word. Leah stood there for a moment, gripping the handle of her cart, then climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. Daniel Cross couldn't get the woman out of his head. He ran her name through the system. Leah Carter, age 36. No criminal record. No outstanding warrants. Single mother. 2 kids. Address listed at Bridgeport Apartments, which was a low-income complex on the south edge of town that the city had been trying to condemn for years. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. People struggled. That was just how the world worked. But something about the way she'd looked at him like she'd already decided he couldn't help and didn't want to try stuck with him. So that night, after his shift, he drove to Bridgeport. The complex was worse than he remembered. Cracked pavement. Broken railings. Half the units had bars on the windows. He found her apartment on the 2nd floor and knocked. A boy answered. 9, maybe 10 years old. Skinny with big eyes and a wary expression. "Your mom home?" Daniel asked. "She's at work. She works nights too." The boy nodded. "What time does she get back late?" A girl appeared behind him. Younger. Maybe 6. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Who are you? The boy asked. Officer Cross. I talked to your mom this morning. I just wanted to check in, make sure everything's okay. We're fine. Yeah, who's watching you while she's at work? The boy's face closed off. We're fine, he repeated. Daniel crouched down so he was eye level. I'm not here to cause trouble. All right, I just want to help. She doesn't need help. Maybe not, but I'm going to leave my card here just in case. He pulled out a business card and held it out. The boy didn't take it. Daniel set it on the railing. You call me if you need anything? Doesn't matter what time. The boy stared at him, then slowly nodded. Daniel stood up, took one last look around, and left. Leah's second shift started at 6 p.m. and ran until 2 a.m. By the time she clocked out, her entire body was numb. She stopped in the employee bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was a stranger hollowed out. Held together by sheer stubbornness, she thought about her kids, about the way Jamie always checked the locks twice before bed because he'd decided that was his job now, about the way Emma asked every morning if Mommy was going to be home that night, about the stack of bills on the kitchen counter that she couldn't afford to look at. She thought about the 12 miles waiting for her outside. Then she dried her face, picked up her bag, and started walking. Daniel was on patrol again when he saw her. Same route, same limping gait. This time he didn't bother with pleasantries. He pulled up beside her and got out of the car. Get in, he said. No, I'm not asking, and I'm not getting in. Ma'am, you're going to collapse out here. Then I collapse. That's my problem, not yours. It becomes my problem when I have to call an ambulance. Leah stopped walking, turned to face him. For the first time, he saw something crack in her expression. Not tears, anger. You want to help me, she said, voice shaking. Fix my car. Pay my rent. Make sure my kids have food tomorrow. You can do that. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. Yeah, she said quietly. That's what I thought. She turned and kept walking. Daniel stood there in the middle of the street, watching her go, and for the first time in years, he felt completely useless. But he didn't drive away. He followed her, headlights off, all the way to Bridgeport, watched her climb the stairs, saw the lights go on in her apartment, heard the faint sound of children's voices. Then he sat in his car and made a call. The next morning, Marcus Webb found Leah in the cafeteria during her break. She was eating another peanut butter sandwich, staring at nothing. Hey, he said, sliding into the chair across from her. Got a minute, she looked up. Surprised. I guess I heard something weird yesterday. One of the security guards said a cop's been hanging around, asking about you. Leah's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Nothing bad. Just checking in. I guess you in some kind of trouble. No. You sure? I'm sure. Marcus leaned back, studying her. You know, if you ever need anything, I don't. Leah, I don't. She repeated, harder this time. I'm fine. Marcus held up his hands. All right? But the offer stands. He left. Leah sat there for a moment, then crumpled up the rest of her sandwich and threw it away. Her appetite was gone. The breaking point came 3 days later. Leah was halfway through her morning walk, mile 6, maybe 7, when her left shoe finally gave up. The sole peeled completely away from the upper, flapping with every step. She stopped. We tried to press it back together, but the tape wouldn't hold anymore. She stood there on the side of the road, in the dark, holding a broken shoe, and felt something inside her snap. Not tears, not panic, just a cold, hollow realization that this was it. This was as far as she could go. Then, headlights appeared behind her. She turned, expecting Daniel Cross and his patrol car, but it wasn't a cop. It was a pickup truck, old and battered. With a dented front bumper and a cracked windshield, it pulled up beside her and the window rolled down. The driver was an older man, maybe 60. With a weathered face and calloused hands. "You need a ride?" he asked. Leah stared at him. Every instinct screamed not to get in a stranger's truck at 4 a.m., but her feet were bleeding. Her shoe was destroyed, and she was still 5 miles from work. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Mercy General. I'm going right past it." "Hop in." She hesitated for one more second. Then she climbed in. The man didn't ask questions, didn't make small talk, just drove. When they reached the hospital, he pulled up to the employee entrance and stopped. "Thanks," Leah said quietly. "Don't mention it." She got out, started to close the door, then paused. "Why'd you stop?" The man looked at her for a long moment. "Because somebody stopped for me once and," he said, "long time ago. Figure I owe the world one." Then he drove away. Leah stood there, watching his taillights disappear, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope, not yet, but something close to it. She clocked in at 5:59 a.m. Rita didn't say anything this time, just marked her down and walked away. Leah grabbed her cart and started cleaning. That afternoon, Daniel Cross walked into Mercy General and asked to speak to the hospital administrator. He was directed to a woman named Margaret Fallon, who had sharp eyes and a sharper suit. "How can I help you, officer?" she asked. Gesturing to a chair, Daniel sat down. "I want to talk to you about one of your employees, Leah Carter." Margaret's expression didn't change. "Is she in some kind of trouble?" "No, the opposite. Actually, I think she's the most dedicated person working here and nobody's noticed." Margaret leaned back in her chair. "Go on." Daniel told her everything. The midnight walks, the broken car, the kids waiting at home. By the time he finished, Margaret's face had gone very still. "How long has this been happening?" she asked. "At least 3 weeks. Maybe longer." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. "Rita, come to my office." Now, 5 minutes later, Rita Moss walked in, looking irritated. "What's this about? How long have you known that Leah Carter has been walking 12 miles to work every day?" Rita blinked. "I didn't. I mean, I knew she had transportation issues. But did you ask? That's not my job." "Your job," Margaret said, voice cold, "is to manage your team. That includes noticing when someone is struggling." She never said anything, because she was afraid you'd fire her. Rita's mouth opened, closed. She looked at Daniel, then back at Margaret. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing," Margaret said. "You're done here. Get out." Rita left. Facered. Margaret turned back to Daniel. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," she said. "I'll handle it from here." "What are you going to do?" Margaret smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Fix it," she said. Leah was cleaning the 5th floor when Margaret found her. She looked up, startled, when the administrator appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Carter," Margaret said, "can I speak with you for a moment?" Leah's heart dropped. "Did I do something wrong?" "No. You did everything right. Come with me." They walked to Margaret's office in silence. Leah's mind was racing. running through every possible disaster. She was about to be fired, or demoted, or accused of something she didn't do. But when they reached the office, Margaret closed the door and gestured to a chair. "Sit," she said. Then, more gently, "Please." Leah sat. Margaret pulled up a chair across from her, not behind the desk. Across from her, like they were equals. "Officer Cross told me what you've been doing," she said. Leah's stomach turned to ice. "I haven't done anything illegal, I know. That's not why you're here." Margaret leaned forward. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Leah looked down at her hands. "Because it's not anyone's problem but mine. That's not how this works. It's how it's always worked." Margaret was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Do you want to keep working here?" "Yes." "Then let me help you." Leah looked up. "I don't need charity. This isn't charity. This is a hospital fixing a problem it should have noticed months ago." Margaret picked up a file from her desk. "I'm authorizing an emergency hardship grant. It'll cover car repairs and 3 months of rent. I'm also moving you to day shift only, with better pay. And I'm assigning you a parking spot right by the entrance." Leah stared at her. "Why?" "Because you've been walking 12 miles a day for 3 weeks and you haven't missed a single shift. That's not dedication. That's desperation. And we failed you." Something broke open in Leah's chest. She tried to hold it back. But the tears came anyway. Hot and fast and unstoppable. Margaret handed her a box of tissues and waited. When Leah could finally speak again, her voice was raw. "I thought if anyone found out, they'd think I was weak. You're the strongest person in this building." Margaret said, "Don't ever forget that." That night, Daniel Cross was finishing his patrol when his radio crackled. "Unit 12. We've got a medical emergency at Mercy General. Requesting backup." Daniel's blood went cold. What kind of emergency employee collapsed in the parking lot? "Ambulance is on scene." He flipped on his lights and drove faster than he should have. When he reached the hospital, there was already a crowd gathered near the employee entrance. EMTs were loading someone onto a stretcher. Daniel pushed through the crowd and saw her. Leah Carter, unconscious, pale as death. "What happened?" he demanded. Marcus Webb was there, holding a blanket. "She collapsed right after her shift. We think it's exhaustion. Maybe dehydration. Maybe something worse." Daniel felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "Is she going to be okay? I don't know." They loaded her into the ambulance and drove away. Sirens screaming. Daniel stood there in the parking lot, watching the lights disappear, and felt the weight of his failure settle over him like a stone. He'd tried to help. He'd thought he'd fixed it. But he hadn't been fast enough. Inside the ambulance, Leah's eyes fluttered open. The EMT leaned over her, checking her vitals. "Stay with me," he said. "You're going to be okay." But Leah wasn't thinking about herself. She was thinking about Jamie and Emma, alone in the apartment, waiting for her to come home. She tried to sit up. "My kids. We'll take care of it. Just rest." "You don't understand. They're alone. They're waiting." Her voice cracked. The EMT exchanged a look with his partner. "We'll make sure someone checks on them," he said. "I promise." Leah closed her eyes. Tears slid down her temples. And for the first time in 3 weeks, she let herself stop fighting. The ambulance turned a corner, and the city lights blurred past the windows like falling stars. The ambulance turned a corner, and the city lights blurred past the windows like falling stars. Daniel Cross was already on his phone before the ambulance disappeared from view. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the number for Child Protective Services, then stopped. His thumb hovered over the call button. If he made this official, those kids would end up in the system. Foster care. Strangers. And Leah would wake up knowing she'd lost everything she'd been fighting for. He put the phone away and got in his car. Bridgeport Apartments looked worse at night. The parking lot lights were mostly dead, leaving pools of shadow between the buildings. Daniel climbed the stairs to apartment 2C and climbed the stairs in the knocked 2C. Footsteps inside. Then silence. He could feel someone watching through the peephole. "It's Officer Cross," he said. "I talked to you a few days ago. I need to speak with you." The door opened a crack. Jamie's face appeared, eyes wide and alert. Behind him, Emma clutched her rabbit. "Where's Mom?" Jamie asked. Daniel crouched down. "She's at the hospital. She's okay, but she collapsed at work. They're taking care of her." Emma made a small sound. Jamie's face went very still. "When's she coming back?" he asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm here to make sure you two are all right until she does." "We're fine. I'm sure you are, but it's late, and you're alone, and that's not safe. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack a bag, both of you, and you're coming with me." Jamie's yaff set. "No, kid, this isn't negotiable. If we leave, they'll say Mom abandoned us. They'll take us away. I know how this works." Daniel sat back on his heels. The boy was 10 years old and already understood the system better than most adults. That said something about the life he'd lived. "Listen to me," Daniel said carefully. "I'm not calling CPS. I'm not putting you in the system. I'm taking you to stay with someone I trust until your mom gets out. That's it. Who, my sister. She's got 2 kids of her own. You'll be safe there." Jamie stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked back at Emma, who was starting to cry. "Can we see Mom?" Jamie asked. "Soon as they let visitors in, I'll take you myself." "Deal." Jamie hesitated. Then he nodded. "Okay." 20 minutes later, Daniel was driving 2 scared kids across town with garbage bags full of clothes in his trunk. Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat, still clutching her rabbit. Jamie sat in front. Staring out the window, "Your mom talks about you?" Daniel said. Jamie didn't respond. "She tell you what she does at the hospital? She cleans?" "Yeah. And you know what else? Every single person I talked to today said she's the best worker they've got. Never complains. Never misses a shift. Just does the job." Jamie's throat worked. "She shouldn't have to walk." "No, she shouldn't. I tried to fix the car myself. I watched videos online, but I couldn't figure it out." Daniel glanced over. The kid's hands were clenched in his lap, knuckles white. "That's not your job," Daniel said quietly. "Then whose job is it?" The question hung in the air. Daniel didn't have a good answer. They pulled up to a modest house in a better part of town. The porch light was on. Daniel's sister, Karen, was waiting at the door. She was younger than him by 3 years, with the same dark hair and sharp eyes. When she saw the kids, her expression softened. "Come on in," she said. "I've got the guest room set up." Jamie carried Emma inside. Karen showed them where everything was: bathroom, kitchen, extra blankets. Her own kids were already asleep upstairs. When she came back down, she found Daniel in the living room. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" she asked. He told her. By the end, Karen's face had gone hard. 3 weeks, she said. "She's been doing this for 3 weeks and nobody noticed. I noticed. I just didn't move fast enough." "Where's she now?" "Mercy General. They're running tests." Karen crossed her arms. "And when she wakes up, I don't know. Well, you better figure it out, because those kids upstairs don't have anyone else." Daniel left an hour later. He drove back to the hospital, parked in the lot, and sat there until the sun came up. Leah woke to white ceiling tiles and the smell of antiseptic. Her mouth was dry. Her head felt stuffed with cotton. When she tried to sit up, pain shot through her abdomen and she fell back with a gasp. A nurse appeared beside her. Young guy, early 20s, with a name tag that said, Ryan AC. He said, "You've got an IV and don't pull it." Leah looked down. Her arm was taped up with tubing running to a bag of clear fluid. "What happened?" she asked. "Severe dehydration, exhaustion, malnutrition. Your potassium levels were in the basement. You're lucky you didn't have a heart attack." The words didn't make sense at first. Then they did. And Leah felt her chest go tight. "My kids. They're safe. Officer Cross took them to his sister's place. He's been here all night waiting for you to wake up. I need to see them. You need to rest." Doctor's orders. Leah tried to sit up again. Ryan put a hand on her shoulder. Gentle but firm. "Ms. Carter, you collapsed because your body gave out. If you push it now, you're going to end up right back here. Or worse. You don't understand, I do. I read your chart. I know what you've been doing. And I'm telling you, if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of anyone." Leah's eyes burned. She turned her face away. Ryan stepped back. "I'll let Officer Cross know you're awake," he said, and left. 10 minutes later, Daniel walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept. His uniform was wrinkled, and there was stubble on his jaw. "Hey," he said. Leah didn't respond. Daniel pulled up a chair and sat down. "Your kids are fine. Karen's got them. They ate breakfast. Emma's watching cartoons. Jamie's pretending he's not scared out of his mind. I want to see them soon as the doctor clears you." Leah closed her eyes. "I messed up." "You didn't mess up. You survived. I should have asked for help." "Yeah, you should have, but you didn't. And now we're here. So let's deal with it." She looked at him. "Why do you care?" Daniel leaned back in the chair. "I've been asking myself the same thing. Best I can figure, it's because you remind me of my mom. She worked 3 jobs when I was a kid. Cleaned offices at night. Waited tables during the day. Did laundry on weekends. She didn't ask for help either. And you know what happened? She had a stroke when I was 15. Spent the last 10 years of her life in a chair." Leah's throat tightened. "So yeah." Daniel said, "I care, because I know how this story ends if nobody steps in." A doctor appeared in the doorway, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. She glanced at Daniel, then at Leah. "Ms. Carter, I'm Dr. Patel. I need to discuss your test results." Daniel stood up. "I'll give you some privacy." "No." Leah said, "Stay." He sat back down. "Doctor," Patel pulled up a stool, "you're severely malnourished. Your iron levels are dangerously low. You've got stress fractures in both feet, and your blood pressure is through the roof. If you keep going the way you've been going, you're looking at organ failure within 6 months." The room went very quiet. "What do I need to do?" Leah asked. "Rest. Proper nutrition. Physical therapy for your feet, and you need to reduce your stress levels, which means you can't keep working double shifts." "I don't work double shifts anymore. The administrator changed my schedule." "Doctor," Patel nodded. "I spoke with Margaret Fallon. She filled me in. That's a good start. But it's not enough. You need at least 2 weeks off to recover." "I can't afford 2 weeks off." "You can't afford not to take them. I'm putting you on medical leave. It's non-negotiable." Leah started to argue, then stopped. She didn't have the energy. "Doctor," Patel stood up. "We'll keep you here for observation for another day or 2. After that, you'll need someone to help you at home for at least a week." Can you arrange that? Leah looked at Daniel. He nodded. Yeah, she said quietly. I can arrange that. By the time Leah was discharged 2 days later, the entire hospital knew her story. Marcus Webb had told a few nurses. The nurses had told the doctors. The doctors had told the administration. By the second day, people Leah had never met were stopping by her room to check in. Rita Moss was not one of them. According to Marcus, she'd been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into workplace negligence. Leah didn't know how to feel about that. Relief. Maybe, or guilt for being relieved. When the discharge papers were finally signed, Daniel picked her up at the entrance. Karen was in the passenger seat. Jamie and Emma were in the back. Emma launched herself at Leah the second the car door opened. Leah caught her, wincing as pain flared in her ribs, and held on tight. I missed you, Emma whispered. I missed you too. Baby. Jamie honked back, arms crossed. When Leah looked at him, his face was carefully blank. You okay? She asked. Yeah. Jamie, I said I'm okay. Leah wanted to push, but Daniel gave her a small shake of his head. Not now. She nodded and got in the car. They drove to Bridgeport in silence. When they pulled into the parking lot, Leah felt her stomach twist. The building looked even worse in daylight. Cracked windows, peeling paint, a broken railing on the second floor that maintenance had been promising to fix for 6 months. Karen helped her up the stairs. Jamie and Emma ran ahead, unlocking the door. When Leah stepped inside, she saw the apartment through fresh eyes. The couch with the busted spring, the kitchen table that wobbled, the stack of overdue bills on the counter. Karen didn't say anything, just helped Leah to the couch and got her settled. I'm going to make you something to eat, she said. When's the last time you had a real meal? Leah tried to remember. I don't know. Karen opened the fridge and made a small sound. Leah, there's nothing in here. There's peanut butter and bread. That's not food. That's survival. Karen pulled out her phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Daniel answered it and came back with 4 grocery bags. What's this? Leah asked. Basics, Karen said, already unpacking. Milk, eggs, vegetables, chicken, rice. Stuff you can actually cook with. I can't afford. You're not paying for it. Consider it a loan. You can pay me back when you're on your feet. Leah wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She watched Karen move around the kitchen, putting things away, and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not gratitude, shame, because she'd let things get this bad. Jamie appeared beside her. Mom, yeah. Are you going to be okay? She looked at him, this kid who'd been holding everything together while she fell apart and wanted to lie. Wanted to tell him everything was fine. But he deserved the truth. I don't know yet, she said, but I'm trying. He nodded. Then, quietly good. That night, after Karen and Daniel left and the kids were asleep, Leah sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of traffic. She should have been exhausted, should have been asleep. But her mind wouldn't stop. She kept replaying the last 3 weeks. The walks, the pain, the fear that one stumble, one mistake, one late arrival would be the end. And now that it was over, now that people knew, she felt exposed in a way that was almost worse. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Webb. Heard you're home. How you feeling? Leah stared at the screen. Then she typed back, like I got hit by a truck. Yeah, that tracks. Listen, a bunch of us at the hospital have been talking. We want to help. You already helped. Margaret gave me the grant. That's not what I mean. We want to do more. Can I come by tomorrow? Leah hesitated. Then, okay. She put the phone down and closed her eyes. Sleep came slowly. And when it did, it was full of dark roads and distant headlights. Marcus showed up the next afternoon with 3 other people. 2 nurses Leah recognized, Linda and Grace, and a guy in jeans and a Mercy General security jacket named Tony. We're not staying long. Marcus said, just wanted to check in. They crowded into the small living room. Linda handed Leah a casserole dish. Homemade lasagna. She said, there's enough for a few days. Grace set down a bag. Toiletries. Shampoo. Soap. Toothpaste. Figured you could use a restock. Tony pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is from the staff. We took up a collection. It's not much. But Leah opened the envelope. Inside was $800 in cash. Her hands started shaking. We can't. She began. You can, Marcus said firmly. And you will, because if the roles were reversed, you'd do the same for us. Leah looked at the money, then at the faces around her. These people, most of whom she'd barely spoken to, had done more for her in 2 days than anyone had in years. Thank you, she whispered. Linda squeezed her hand. You're one of us. We take care of our own. After they left, Leah sat on the couch with the envelope in her lap and cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Something she didn't have a name for. 2 days later, Daniel showed up with a mechanic named Eddie Ruiz. Eddie was short, stocky, with grease permanently embedded under his fingernails, and a saint's cap pulled low over his eyes. Heard. You got a car that needs fixing, Eddie said. Leah led them to the parking lot where her car had been sitting for 3 weeks. It was a 2004 Honda Civic with rust spots and a cracked windshield. Eddie popped the hood and started poking around. When's the last time you had this serviced? He asked. 2 years ago. Maybe 3. Eddie whistled. Yeah, that explains a lot. Your timing belt's shot. Alternator's going. Battery's dead. You got a couple hoses that are about to blow. How much to fix it? Eddie pulled out a rag and wiped his hands. Normally $1,500. Maybe $2,000. Leah's Hart sang. I don't have that. I know. That's why I'm doing it for parts cost. You cover the materials. I'll cover the labor. Why? Eddie glanced at Daniel. Then back at her. Because Danny here vouched for you. And because I got a sister who worked herself into the ground trying to keep her kids fed, I know what that looks like. Leah didn't know what to say. I'll have it done by the end of the week. Eddie said, just get me a list of what you need, and I'll order the parts. After he left, Leah turned to Daniel. You didn't have to do this. I know. Why are you? Daniel leaned against his car. You ever heard the story about the starfish? No. Guy's walking on a beach covered with thousands of starfish that washed up. He sees a kid throwing them back in the ocean one by one. So he says, Kid, there's too many. You can't make a difference. And the kid picks up another starfish, throws it in, and says, Made a difference to that one. Leah stared at him. You're the starfish, Daniel said, and I'm the stupid kid who can't walk away. Over the next week, things started to shift. Eddie fixed the car. Karen brought groceries every few days. Marcus organized a rotating schedule of hospital staff who dropped by to help with cooking, cleaning, and watching the kids so Leah could rest. Even Margaret Fallon called to check in. But the biggest change was Jamie. He'd been quiet since Leah came home, polite but distant, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then one night, while Leah was folding laundry, he appeared in the doorway. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. Why didn't you tell me it was that bad? Leah set down the shirt she was folding. I didn't want you to worry. I was already worried. I've been worried for months. Jamie, you think I didn't notice. You think I'm stupid. I never said that. Then why didn't you trust me? The question hit like a punch. Leah sat down on the edge of the bed. I was trying to protect you, she said. From what? From feeling like you had to fix it. You're 10 years old. You should be thinking about school and friends and video games, not whether your mom's going to make it home. Jamie's jaw tightened. That's not how it works. I know, but I wanted it to. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jamie said, I fixed the lock on the bathroom door, and I patched the hole in Emma's wall. And I figured out how to reset the breaker when the power goes out. Leah looked at him. When did you do all that? While you were at work? Her throat closed up. I'm not a kid anymore. Jamie said, Stop treating me like one. Leah reached out and pulled him into a hug. He resisted for a second, then gave in. I'm sorry, she whispered. Just don't lie to me again. I won't. When he pulled away, his eyes were red. He wiped them quickly and left the room. Leah sat there for a long time, staring at the pile of laundry, and realized that she'd been so focused on surviving that she'd stopped seeing what was right in front of her. By the end of the second week, Leah was starting to feel human again. The pain in her feet had dulled to a manageable ache. Her energy was coming back. Dr. Patel cleared her to return to work on light-duty half shifts. No heavy lifting. Margaret called her into the office the day before she was scheduled to come back. How are you feeling? Margaret asked. Better. Good. Because I need to talk to you about something. Leah's stomach tightened. Okay. Margaret pulled out a folder. We completed the investigation into Rita Moss. Turns out, she's been writing people up for things she should have been handling herself. Ignoring safety complaints. Pushing people to work through injuries. You weren't the only one. What's going to happen to her? She's been terminated. And we're restructuring the cleaning staff. I want you to take over as lead supervisor. Leah blinked. What? You'd be managing the team, scheduling, training, quality control. It's a 30% pay increase and full benefits. I'm not qualified. You've been doing the job for 5 years without complaint. You know the building better than anyone. And more importantly, you give a damn. That's more than I can say for most people. Leah stared at the folder. Why me? Because you earned it. And because I should have offered it to you a long time ago. Margaret slid the folder across the desk. Think about it. Let me know by the end of the week. Leah picked up the folder and walked out in a daze. That night, she told the kids over dinner spaghetti that Karen had taught her how to make from scratch. They offered me a promotion, she said. MS facilite up. Does that mean more money? Yeah. It does. Can we get a new couch? Leah laughed. Maybe? We'll see. Jamie was quiet. When Leah looked at him, he was staring at his plate. What do you think? She asked. I think you should take it. Yeah, he looked up. Yeah, you deserve it. Leah felt her chest go tight. Thanks. Kid. After dinner, she sat on the busted couch and pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her messages updates from Marcus. Check-ins from Karen. A voicemail from Eddie, saying the car was ready. Then she opened a new message to Daniel. Thank you for everything. His response came a minute later. You did the hard part. I just drove the car. Leah smiled. Then she opened the folder Margaret had given her and started reading. The next morning, Daniel was finishing his shift when dispatch called. Unit 12. We've got a disturbance at Bridgeport Apartments. Tenant reporting a break-in. Daniel's blood went cold. What's the apartment number 2C? He flipped on the lights and drove faster than he should have. When he pulled into the parking lot, there was already another patrol car on scene. Officer Lisa Grant was standing outside Leah's door, talking to a man in his 50s with slicked back hair and a cheap suit. Daniel got out of the car. "What's going on?" Lisa turned at. "Building manager says someone broke into this unit last night. Door was open when he came by this morning." Daniel looked at the door. It was ajar, hanging crooked on its hinges. His stomach dropped. He pushed past the manager and went inside. The apartment was trashed. Furniture overturned. Drawers dumped out. The TV was gone. So was the small laptop. Leah kept on the kitchen counter, and in the middle of the living room floor, written in black marker on a piece of torn notebook paper, was a message: "Stop asking questions. Stop asking questions." Daniel stared at the message, then pulled out his phone and called Karen. "Where's Leah?" he asked the second she picked up. "At my place. She dropped the kids off an hour ago. Why keep her there? Don't let her leave. I'll explain later." He hung up before Karen could respond and turned to Lisa. "Get forensics here? I want prints, photo, everything. You think this is connected to? I don't think anything yet. Just get them here." The building manager was hovering in the doorway. Daniel walked over to him. "What time did you find this?" Daniel asked. "Maybe 7:30 this morning. I was doing rounds and saw the door hanging open." "You see anyone coming or going last night?" "No. But I wasn't here. I live off-site." "What about security cameras?" The manager laughed. "In this building, you're lucky the lights work." Daniel looked around the apartment again. Whoever did this wasn't looking for valuables. The TV and laptop were gone. But a stack of cash, the money from the hospital collection, was still sitting on the kitchen counter, untouched. This wasn't a robbery. This was a message. He pulled out his notebook and started writing down everything he could see. Overturned furniture, torn cushions, drawers dumped on the floor. Then he stopped. One of the drawers from Leah's bedroom dresser was lying near the couch. Inside were papers, bills, pay stubs, medical records. He crouched down and sifted through them. Most were routine, but at the bottom was a folder he hadn't seen before. Inside were legal documents, court filings, and a name that made Daniel's blood run cold: Vincent Mora. He pulled out his phone and called the station. "Run a name for me," he said when the dispatcher picked up. "Vincent Mora. I need everything you've got. Give me 5 minutes." Daniel waited. Lisa was taking photos of the room. The building manager had wandered off. When his phone rang, he answered immediately. "What'd you find Vincent Mora? Age 52. Prior convictions for assault. Intimidation. Fraude. Currently out on parole. Last known address is in Riverton Heights. What's his connection to Ashford? Nothing recent. But 10 years ago, he was cited in a domestic violence case. Victim was..." A pause. "Leah Carter." Daniel felt the floor shift under him. "Is there an active restraining order?" "Expired 6 years ago." "She never renewed it." "Send me his file. Everything." He hung up and stood there for a moment. Processing. Leah had never mentioned an ex. Never mentioned violence. But the pieces were starting to fit together: the fear, the silence, with the way she'd looked at him that first night, like she expected him to make things worse. His phone buzzed. The file came through. He opened it and started reading. Vincent Mora had been arrested twice for assaulting Leah. The first time, she'd pressed charges. The second time, she'd dropped them. The restraining order had been issued after the second arrest, but according to the notes, she'd moved 3 times in 2 years, trying to stay ahead of him. Then, nothing. No contact. No incidents. Like he'd disappeared. Until now. Daniel called Karen again. "I need you to keep Leah and the kids at your place until I say otherwise." Danny, what's going on? Just do it. Please, At. He hung up and walked outside. Lisa was on the phone with forensics. The building manager was smoking a cigarette by the stairs. Daniel got in his car and drove to Riverton Heights. Vincent Mora's last known address was a rundown duplex with bars on the windows and a yard full of weeds. Daniel parked across the street and watched for 10 minutes. No movement. No lights. He got out, walked up to the door, and knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Harder this time. The door opened. A woman in her 60s with gray hair and suspicious eyes peered out. "What do you want?" she asked. Daniel showed his badge. "I'm looking for Vincent Mora. This, his address, used to be. He moved out 2 months ago. Where'd he go? Don't know. Don't care. He was 3 months behind on rent. He leave a forwarding address? No. Just disappeared one day. Left half his stuff behind." Daniel pulled out his notebook. "You know where he works? He didn't work. Just sat around drinking and complaining. He ever mention a woman named Leah Carter?" The woman's face changed. "That, his ex, yeah. He talked about her sometimes. Not nice things." "What kind of things?" The woman hesitated. "Look, I don't want trouble. You're not in trouble. I just need to know what he said." She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped out onto the porch and lowered her voice. "He said she owed him. Said she ruined his life and he was going to make her pay. I figured it was just talk. Guys like him, they're all talk." "Did he say how he was going to make her pay?" "No. But he got real worked up about it. Started drinking more. Then one day he was gone." Daniel handed her a card. "If he comes back, call me. Don't talk to him. Don't let him in. Just call." The woman took the card and nodded. Daniel got back in his car and sat there for a moment, thinking. Vincent had been planning this. The break-in wasn't random. He'd waited until Leah was vulnerable, until she had something to lose. And then he'd struck. But why now? And what did he want? Daniel pulled out his phone and called the station again. "I need a bolo on Vincent Mora. Consider him armed and dangerous." "What's the charge?" "Breaking and entering. Intimidation. Violation of parole." "I don't care. Just find him." He hung up and started driving back to Karen's house. Leah was sitting on Karen's couch when Daniel arrived. She looked up when he walked in, and he could see in her eyes that she already knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. Daniel sat down across from her. "Someone broke into your apartment last night?" Leah went very still. "The kids. They're fine. They weren't there. But whoever did this left a message." "What kind of message?" Daniel pulled out his phone and showed her the photo. Leah stared at the screen. Her face went pale. "It's him," she whispered. "Vincent." She nodded. "Why didn't you tell me about him?" "Because I thought he was gone. I thought." Her voice cracked. "I haven't heard from him in 6 years. I changed my number. I moved. I did everything I was supposed to do. Leah, he's escalating. The break-in. The message, this isn't going to stop. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to file a new restraining order. I want you to press charges, and I want you to stay here until we find him." Leah shook her head. A restraining order didn't stop him last time. It just made him angrier. "Then we'll do more than a restraining order. We'll put him back in jail." For what?" "Breaking into an apartment, he'll be out in 48 hours. Not if he violated parole. And breaking in counts." Leah looked at him. "You don't understand what he's like. He doesn't care about jail. He doesn't care about anything except making me hurt. Then help me stop him." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "He knows where I work. He knows where the kids go to school. He knows everything. How I don't know?" But he always has. That's why I kept moving. And it never mattered. Daniel leaned forward. This time is different. This time you've got people who'll back you up. For how long? Until he shows up at the hospital, until he corners me in the parking lot. You can't be everywhere. Daniel, no. But I can make sure he knows that if he touches you, he's done. Leah looked away. I'm tired of running. Then don't run. Stand your ground. And if he comes after my kids, Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Because he knew what Vincent was capable of. He'd read the files, seen the photos. Men like Vincent didn't stop until they got what they wanted. Or until someone made them stop. That night, Daniel called in every favor he had. He got the bolo upgraded to a priority search. He called Eddie Ruiz and asked him to install a security system at Leah's apartment. He reached out to Marcus and asked him to coordinate extra security at the hospital. Then he went home, sat at his kitchen table, and pulled out Vincent Mora's file again. There had to be something he was missing. Some pattern, some clue. He started going through the old incident reports. The first arrest had been for assault. Vincent had shoved Leah down a flight of stairs after an argument. The second had been worse. He'd broken her arm and given her a concussion. The restraining order had been issued 3 days later. But then, nothing. 6 years of silence. Daniel pulled out a calendar and started marking dates. The arrests, the restraining order, the times Leah had moved. And then he saw it. Vincent had been released from jail 6 years ago. The same month Leah's restraining order expired. He'd been waiting, watching, biding his time. And now that Leah was finally starting to rebuild, he decided it was time to tear her down again. Daniel's phone rang. It was the station. We got a hit on the bolo. The dispatcher said, Vincent Mora was spotted at a gas station on Route 9 about an hour ago. Paid cash and left. Which direction? North? Toward Ashford, yeah. Daniel grabbed his keys and headed for the door. He found the gas station 20 minutes later. The clerk, a kid in his 20s with a nose ring and bored expression, didn't remember much. Guy came in, bought cigarettes. Left. He said, That's it. What was he driving? Old pickup. Dark blue, maybe black. Had a dent in the front bumper. You get a plate? No. Daniel showed him a photo of Vincent. This, him. The kid squinted at the screen. Yeah, that's him. He say anything, asked if I knew where Bridgeport Apartments was. Daniel's stomach dropped. What'd you tell him? I said I didn't know. I'm not from here. Did he ask anything else? No. Just paid and left. Daniel walked outside and looked around. The gas station was less than 10 miles from Bridgeport. Vincent was circling, getting closer. He got in his car and called Karen. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Danny, you're scaring me. Just do it. He hung up and drove. By the time he reached Karen's house, it was nearly midnight. The lights were on. Karen met him at the door. What the hell is going on? She asked. Vincent Mora was spotted an hour ago asking for directions to Bridgeport. He's looking for Leah. Karen's face went hard. Where is he now? I don't know. But he's close. Daniel walked inside. Leah was sitting on the couch with Jamie and Emma on either side of her. When she saw his face, she stood up. He's here. Isn't he? She said. Not yet. But he's coming. Jamie looked up. Who's coming? Leah hesitated. Then she crouched down in front of him. Someone I used to know. Someone who's not a good person. Is he going to hurt you? No. Because we're not going to let him get close. Emma started crying. Leah pulled her into a hug. Daniel turned to Karen. I'm staying here tonight. If he shows up, I'll handle it. You can't just camp out here. Watch me. Karen looked at Leah. Then back at Daniel. Fine. But you're sleeping on the couch. Deal. That night, Daniel sat in the living room with his service weapon on the coffee table and his phone in his hand. Every time a car passed, he looked out the window. Every time the wind rattled the shutters, he tensed. Leah came downstairs around 2 a.m. She sat down on the other end of the couch. You should be sleeping. Daniel said, So, should you... They sat in silence for a moment. Then Leah said, Why are you doing this? Because it's my job. No, it's not. Your job is to patrol the streets and write tickets. This. She gestured around the room. This is something else. Daniel didn't respond. You barely know me. Leah said, And yet you're sitting here in the middle of the night with a gun on the table like you're waiting for a war. Maybe I am. Why? Daniel looked at her. Because I've seen what happens when people like Vincent don't get stopped. I've seen the bodies, the funerals, the kids who grow up without parents because someone decided they were too busy to care. And I'm not going to let that happen to you. Leah's eyes filled with tears. What if you can't stop him? Then I'll make sure he goes down with me. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she wiped her eyes and stood up. Thank you, she said quietly, and went back upstairs. Daniel sat there alone, listening to the house settle, and thought about all the ways this could go wrong. The next morning, Marcus called. We've got a problem, he said. What kind of problem, doctor? Hendricks is filing a formal complaint. Says the extra security at the hospital is disruptive and unnecessary. Daniel closed his eyes. You're kidding. I wish I was. He's threatening to go to the board. If Margaret doesn't pull the guards, let him. This isn't about his convenience. Danny, if the board gets involved, they might shut the whole thing down. And then Leah's got no protection at work. Daniel swore under his breath. Tell Margaret I'll talk to him. You sure that's a good idea? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He hung up and drove to the hospital. Dr. Hendricks was in his office, reviewing charts. When Daniel walked in without knocking, he looked up with irritation. Can I help you? Hendricks asked. You filed a complaint about the security. I did. This is a hospital, not a police station. Your officers are making patients uncomfortable. They're here to protect one of your employees. From what? Exactly. A hypothetical threat. I've reviewed the incident reports. There's no evidence this man is actually dangerous. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed him the photo of Leah's trashed apartment. Then he pulled up the hospital records from 10 years ago, the x-rays of her broken arm, the CT scan of her skull. This is what he did last time. Daniel said, You want to wait until he does it again? Hendricks looked at the photos, then back at Daniel. That's not my responsibility. It is when she's working in your hospital. She's a janitor, not a doctor, not a nurse. She cleans floors. Daniel felt something snap inside him. He leaned forward, hands flat on the desk. Let me explain something to you, he said, voice low and dangerous. That woman has walked 12 miles a day for 3 weeks just to keep this job. She's been surviving on peanut butter sandwiches and willpower while people like you walk past her like she's invisible. And now that someone's finally trying to help her, you're going to stand in the way because it's inconvenient. Hendricks stiffened. I don't appreciate your tone. I don't care. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your complaint. You're going to let the security stay. And you're going to make sure everyone on your staff knows that if they see anything suspicious, they report it immediately. And if I don't, Daniel straightened up, then I'll make sure every news outlet in the state knows that Mercy General values efficiency over employee safety. How's that for bad publicity? Hendricks' jaw tightened. Get out of my office. Gladly. Daniel walked out. hands shaking with anger. He was halfway down the hall when Margaret caught up with him. "I heard you just threatened Paul Hendricks," she said. "I didn't threaten him. I gave him options. Danny, he deserved it." Margaret sighed. "Yeah, he did. But now I've got to smooth this over before he goes to the board. Let him go to the board. Let them hear what he said. It's not that simple. It should be." Margaret studied him for a moment. "You're taking this personally." "Damn right I am." Why Daniel stopped walking? "Because I'm tired of watching people get hurt while everyone else looks the other way. I'm tired of hearing, 'not my responsibility,' from people who should know better. And I'm tired of pretending that's just how the world works." Margaret nodded slowly. "All right, I'll handle Hendricks. You focus on finding Vincent." "Thanks." He left the hospital and got back in his car. His phone rang before he could start the engine. It was the station. "We got another sighting," the dispatcher said. "Vincent Mora was seen at a diner on Polk Street. He's still there." Daniel flipped on his lights and drove. The diner was a greasy spoon called Rosie's Asian, wedged between a pawn shop and a laundromat. Daniel pulled into the parking lot and spotted the dark blue pickup immediately. Dented bumper. Rusted tailgate. He called for backup, then got out of the car and walked inside. Vincent Mora was sitting in a booth near the back, nursing a cup of coffee and staring out the window. He was bigger than Daniel expected. 6 feet, maybe 200 pounds, with a shaved head and a scar running down his left cheek. Daniel walked over and sat down across from him. Vincent looked up. His eyes were cold. "You're the cop," he said, "and you're the guy who's been making Leah's life hell." Vincent smiled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yeah, you do. Breaking and entering. Intimidation. Violation of parole. That's 3 strikes. Prove it." "I don't need to. Your landlord already gave a statement. And we've got you on camera at the gas station asking for directions to Bridgeport." Vincent's smile faded. "That's not a crime. It is when you've got a history of violence and a victim who's terrified of you." Vincent leaned back in the booth. "Leah's not a victim. She's a liar. That... Why you broke into her apartment? I didn't break into anything." "Then why'd you leave a note telling her to stop asking questions?" Vincent's expression didn't change. "I want a lawyer." Daniel stood up. "Fine. You can talk to him from a cell." 2 patrol cars pulled up outside. Officers came in and cuffed Vincent without incident. He didn't resist, didn't say a word, just stared at Daniel with that same cold smile. As they let him out, Vincent stopped. "Tell Leah I said hi," he said. Daniel didn't respond. He watched them put Vincent in the back of the patrol car and drive away. Then he got in his own car and sat there for a long time, trying to shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Leah was at Karen's house when Daniel called. "We got him," he said. She went very still. "We're Rosie's diner. He's in custody now. They're booking him on breaking and entering and parole violation. How long will they hold him?" "Depends on the judge. Maybe a few days. Maybe longer." Leah closed her eyes. "And then what? Then we make sure he stays away from you." "How?" Daniel didn't have a good answer. Because he knew the system, knew how it worked. Vincent would get a lawyer. He'd post bail. And then he'd be back on the streets. "We'll figure it out," he said finally. Leah laughed. And it was a bitter sound. "You keep saying that, but you don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of." "Then tell me." There was a long silence. Then Leah said, "He broke my arm because I talked to a male coworker. He gave me a concussion because I smiled at the grocery store clerk. He told me I belonged to him. And if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I regretted it." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "I left anyway." Leah continued. And for 6 years, I thought I was free. But he was just waiting, watching. And now he's back. And I don't know how to stop him. You don't have to stop him alone. I've been alone my whole life. Daniel, I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn. Because you've got people now, and we're not going anywhere. Leah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you," and hung up. Daniel sat in his car and stared at the phone. Then he called Eddie Ruiz. "I need that security system installed today." He said, "I'm already on it. Should be done by tonight." "Good. And Eddie, make it bulletproof." That evening, Daniel drove to the county jail. He told the desk sergeant he needed to speak with Vincent Mora. 5 minutes later, he was sitting in an interview room, waiting. Vincent walked in, hands cuffed, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. He sat down across from Daniel and smiled. "Couldn't stay away," he said. "I want to make something very clear." Daniel said, "If you go near Leah or her kids again, I will personally make sure you spend the rest of your life in a cell. Are we clear?" Vincent laughed. "You think you scare me? I think you're a coward who gets off on hurting people weaker than you. And I think the second you're up against someone who fights back, you fold." Vincent's smile disappeared. He leaned forward. "You don't know what you're talking about. I read your file. 2 arrests. Both against a woman half your size. You ever go after someone your own weight?" She had it coming. For what existing, Vincent's jaw tightened. "She took everything from me. You took everything from yourself. She just had the sense to get out." Vincent stood up. "We're done here. Sit down. Make me." The guard stepped forward, but Daniel waved him off. He stood up and walked to the door. "Enjoy the cell." He said, "You're going to be here a while." Vincent's voice followed him out. "I'll be out in 48 hours. And when I'm coming for her." Daniel stopped, turned around. "No," he said quietly. "You're not." He walked out before Vincent could respond. 2 days later, Vincent Mora posted bail. Daniel got the call at 6 a.m. He was at Karen's house within 10 minutes. Leah was in the kitchen, making coffee. When she saw his face, she set down the pot. "He's out," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah? How long do I have? I don't know. But we're not taking chances. You're staying here. The kids are staying here. And I'm posting an officer outside 24/7. For how long?" "As long as it takes." Leah turned away. "I can't live like this. You won't have to. We're going to end this." How Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down. By making him do something stupid. By pushing him until he breaks. And when he does, we'll be ready. Leah looked at him. "You want to use me as bait. I want to give him enough rope to hang himself. And if it doesn't work, it will. You don't know that." "No. But I know he's obsessed with you. And obsessed people make mistakes." Leah sat down across from him. "What do you need me to do?" "Go back to work. Act normal. Let him think he's won. And when he shows up, we grab him." Leah was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right," she said. "Let's do it." 3 days later, Leah went back to work. She clocked in at 6 a.m., grabbed her cart, and started cleaning. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow in the hallway sent her heart racing. But she kept moving. Marcus checked in on her every hour. The security guards rotated shifts, always keeping her in sight. And Daniel sat in the parking lot, watching the entrance. Nothing happened the first day, or the second. On the third day, Vincent showed up. He walked through the main entrance at 2 p.m. wearing jeans and a leather jacket, hands in his pockets. The security guard at the desk stopped him. "Can I help you?" the guard asked. "I'm here to see someone," Vincent said. "Who, Leah Carter?" The guard picked up the phone. Daniel was there in 30 seconds. Vincent saw him coming and smiled. "Officer," he said, "nice to see you again. You need to leave." Daniel said, "This is a public building. I've got a right to be here. Not when you're here to harass someone." "I'm not harassing anyone. I'm visiting." "Leah doesn't want to see you." "Did she tell you that?" "She doesn't have to." Vincent's smile widened. "Then I guess we're at an impasse?" Daniel stepped closer. "Leave. Now. Or what, you gonna arrest me for standing in a lobby if I have to?" Vincent held up his hands. "All right. I'm going. But tell Leah I stopped by." He turned and walked out. Daniel watched him go, then pulled out his phone and called Leah. "He was just here," he said. Her voice was shaking. "What did he want to rattle you?" "Don't let him." "I'm trying. I know. Just stay where you are. I'll be right up." He hung up and headed for the elevators. When he found Leah, she was in a supply closet, hands braced against the wall, breathing hard. "Hey," he said gently. "You're okay." "I'm not okay. He's playing with me. He knows I'm scared. And he's enjoying it. Let him enjoy it. Because the second he crosses the line, we've got him." Leah looked at him. "What if he doesn't cross the line? What if he just keeps showing up? Keeps watching? Until I break. Then we find another way." "There is no other way." Daniel pulled her into a hug. She resisted for a second, then gave in, burying her face in his shoulder. "I've got you," he said. "I'm not letting go." That night, Vincent showed up at Bridgeport Apartments. Eddie's security cameras caught him standing in the parking lot, staring up at Leah's window. He didn't try to break in, didn't approach the building, just stood there for 20 minutes. Then left. Daniel reviewed the footage the next morning. Vincent's face was clear. His intent was obvious, but it wasn't enough. He called the district attorney. "We need a new restraining order," he said, "and we need it today. Based on what he hasn't threatened her, hasn't touched her, legally. He's done nothing wrong. He broke into her apartment. You can't prove that. The note wasn't signed. There's no prints. No witnesses. He's stalking her. Standing in a public place isn't stalking." Daniel slammed his hand on the disc. "Then what the hell do we do? You wait. And the second he makes a move, you call me." Daniel hung up and sat there, staring at the wall. Then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She looked scared. "I like it." Daniel's blood turned to ice. He called the number back. It rang once and then went to voicemail. He forwarded the text to the DA. Then called Leah. "Pack a bag," he said. "You're moving tonight? Pack a bag," he said. "You're moving tonight?" Leah's voice came through tight and controlled. "Where am I going? Somewhere he can't find you. I'll explain when I get there." Daniel hung up and made 3 more calls in quick succession. The first was to Karen, telling her to prepare for long-term guests. The second was to Eddie, requesting immediate relocation of the security equipment. The third was to his captain, requesting authorization for protective custody. Captain Rita Vance had been with the Ashford PD for 23 years and didn't approve requests lightly. When Daniel explained the situation, she was silent for a long moment. "How solid is your evidence?" she asked. Text message from his number. Surveillance footage. Pattern of harassment. The DA sign off on this. He wants more. "I'm not waiting for more." Vance exhaled slowly. You're putting your badge on the line. I know. If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. Another pause. Then, you've got 48 hours. Make it count. Daniel arrived at Bridgeport 30 minutes later with 2 patrol cars as backup. Leah was waiting outside with Jamie and Emma, 3 garbage bags of belongings at their feet. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of the past week had physically compressed her. "Where are we going?" Jamie asked. "Somewhere safe," Daniel said. He looked at Leah. "You trust me," she nodded. They drove in convoy to a location Daniel had arranged that afternoon, a small house on the outskirts of Ashford owned by a retired officer named Tom Reeves. Tom had moved to Florida 6 months ago but kept the property for exactly this kind of situation. The house was plain, single story, with a fenced yard and neighbors who minded their own business. Daniel pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. The patrol cars parked on the street, officers taking up positions. Tom had left a key under the mat. Inside, the house was furnished simply couch, table, biz, basic kitchen equipment. It smelled like dust and disuse, but it was clean. Emma immediately claimed one of the bedrooms. Jamie stood in the living room, arms crossed, looking at everything like he was calculating escape routes. Leah set down the bags and turned to Daniel. "How long do we stay here?" "Until Vincent makes a mistake big enough that I can lock him up permanently. And if he doesn't, he will. Guys like him always do." Leah walked to the window and looked out at the patrol car. "I can't live in hiding forever. You won't have to." She turned around, and her expression was harder than he'd ever seen it. "You keep making promises. You can't guarantee." "I know." "Then stop. I need honesty." "Not hope?" Daniel met her eyes. "Honest answer. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if we'll catch him tomorrow or next month. But I know that if you go back to Bridgeport, if you go back to your normal routine, he'll hurt you. And I can't let that happen." Leah's jaw tightened. Then she nodded once and walked into the bedroom where Emma was unpacking. Jamie lingered in the doorway. "You think he'll find us here?" "No?" Daniel said, "This place isn't in any database. Your mom's name isn't on any paperwork. As far as the system knows, you're not here. What about school? You're taking a few days off." Jamie looked like he wanted to argue, then thought better of it. "Okay." That night, Daniel slept in his car in the driveway. The patrol officers rotated every 6 hours. Atreya M. His phone rang. It was dispatch. "We've got a disturbance at Bridgeport Apartments. Tenant called in someone trying to break into 2C. Daniel's stomach dropped. "I'm 10 minutes out." He called the patrol car watching the safe house. "Do not leave this location for any reason." "You copy." "Copy." He drove to Bridgeport with lights off, rolling into the parking lot quietly. 2 other units were already on scene. Vincent's truck was parked crookedly near the stairs. Driver's door open. Daniel got out and approached the building. Officers were already at Leah's door, which had been kicked in the frame, splintered, lock hanging by one screw. Inside, the apartment had been destroyed. Furniture flipped. Walls kicked in. Vincent had torn through every room like a tornado. One of the officers came out holding an evidence bag. Inside was a knife, 8 inches. Serrated edge. Found this on the floor in the bedroom. The officer said. Daniel felt cold. "Where's Vincent gone?" Neighbor says she heard him shouting. Then running down the stairs about 5 minutes before we arrived. Daniel pulled out his phone and called it in. "All units. Suspect is mobile. Last seen at Bridgeport Apartments, driving a dark blue pickup. Consider armed and dangerous." He stood in the doorway of Leah's apartment and looked at the destruction. This wasn't just rage. This was intent. Vincent had come here to kill, and when he found the place empty, He'd lost control. Daniel's phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. Where is she? He didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded it to the DA with a single message. Still not enough. By morning, Vincent's truck had been found abandoned near the train station. K9 units tracked his scent to the platform, then lost it. He'd either gotten on a train or switched vehicles. Daniel sat in the captain's office, running on coffee and adrenaline. He's escalating, Vance said, reading the report. Breaking in with a weapon is assault with intent. Can we get a warrant? For what he's already violated parole. We can arrest him on sight. The problem is finding him. He's not done. He's going to keep looking for her. Then we make sure she stays hidden until we bring him in. Daniel leaned forward. I need more officers. I need surveillance on every place he might look. The hospital, Bridgeport, the school. You've got 2 patrol units in 48 hours. Use them wisely. Daniel left the station and drove to the safe house. Leah was sitting on the front steps, watching Jamie and Emma play in the yard. When she saw him, she stood up. What happened? She asked. He broke into your apartment last night. We found a knife. Leah's face went pale. He was going to, yeah. She sat down hard on the steps. Daniel sat beside her. I should have left town years ago. She said quietly, taken the kids and disappeared. Where would you have gone? I don't know. Anywhere. He would have followed you. Guys like Vincent don't quit. Then what's the point? If he's never going to stop, what am I supposed to do? Daniel looked at her. You stop running. You stand your ground. And you let people help you. Leah laughed bitterly. I've been standing my ground for 10 years. It hasn't worked yet. That's because you were standing alone. You're not alone anymore. She turned to look at him. You really believe that, don't you? Yeah, I do. Why? Because I've seen what happens when people give up. And I've seen what happens when they fight back. One ends in graves. The other ends in survival. Leah was quiet for a long time. Then she said, if this goes wrong, if he gets to me, he won't. But if he does, I need you to promise me something. What? Take care of my kids. Don't let them go into the system. Find them somewhere safe. Daniel's throat tightened. That's not going to happen. Promise me anyway. He looked at Jamie and Emma, laughing as they chased each other around the yard, and felt the weight of what she was asking. I promise, he said. The break came 2 days later. A patrol officer spotted Vincent at a motel on the east side of town, the kind of place that rented by the hour and didn't ask questions. Daniel got the call at noon and was on scene in 15 minutes with backup. The manager was a thin man in his 60s who looked like he regretted every decision that had led him here. Room 14, he said, handing over the key. Paid cash. Been here since yesterday. Daniel assembled the team outside the room. 4 officers. Vests on. Weapons drawn. He knocked. Vincent Mora. Ashford PD? Open the door. No response. Daniel knocked again. We've got a warrant. Open up or we're coming in. Still nothing. He nodded to the officer with the ram. One hit and the door flew open. The room was empty. Bet un made. Takeout containers on the table. But no, Vincent. Daniel walked inside. Clearing each corner, the bathroom was empty. The closet was empty. But on the bed was a laptop, open and running. Daniel approached carefully. The screen showed a live feed security camera footage from somewhere. It took him a second to recognize the location. It was the safe house. The camera angle showed the front yard, Jamie and Emma playing, Leah sitting on the steps. Daniel's blood went cold. He pulled out his phone and called the patrol unit stationed there. No answer. He called again. Voicemail. Everyone out? He said. Now. They piled into the cars and drove. Daniel pushed the cruiser to 80. Lights and sirens blaring. His phone rang. Dispatch. Unit 7 isn't responding to check-in. The dispatcher said, last contact was 20 minutes ago. Send back up to 1247 Riverside Drive. Officer down. Possible otage situation. He hung up and drove faster. When they reached the safe house, the patrol car was still in the driveway. Daniel got out, weapon drawn, and approached. The officer inside was slumped over the wheel, unconscious. There was a knot on the back of his head the size of a golf ball. Daniel checked his pulse still alive, then ran for the house. The front door was open. Inside, the living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Daniel moved down the hall. Heart pounding, he found Leah in the bedroom. Sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. Her face was bruised. Her lip was split, and in her hand was a piece of broken glass from the window. Where are the kids? Daniel asked. Closet, Leah said, her voice hoarse. Daniel opened the closet door. Jamie and Emma were huddled inside. Emma crying silently into her brother's shoulder. Jamie looked up at Daniel with wide, terrified eyes. You're okay, Daniel said. You're safe. He turned back to Leah. Where's Vincent? She pointed to the bathroom. Daniel moved down the hall. Weapon raised. The bathroom door was ajar. He pushed it open. Vincent was sitting on the floor, back against the tub, holding his stomach. Blood seeped between his fingers. On the floor beside him was the knife, the same one from Leah's apartment. Vincent looked up at Daniel and smiled through the blood. She stabbed me. Daniel kicked the knife away and keyed his radio. I need an ambulance at 1247 Riverside. Suspect is injured. Victim is secure. Vincent laughed, then coughed. I almost had her. Shut up. She was right there. I could have finished it. Daniel crouched down. You didn't finish anything. You lost. Vincent's smile faded. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They loaded Vincent onto a stretcher and took him out. Daniel watched them go, then went back to the bedroom. Leah was still on the floor. The piece of glass was on the ground beside her, stained red. Daniel sat down next to her. You all right, no? Medics need to check you out. I'm fine. Leah, I said I'm fine. She looked at him, and her eyes were hollow. He got past your officer. He broke into the house. He cornered me in the bedroom. And if I hadn't grabbed that glass... She stopped, shaking. Daniel put a hand on her shoulder. But you did. You fought back. I shouldn't have had to. I know. You promised me he wouldn't get close. I know. And he did anyway. Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. He'd failed. The system had failed. And she'd been the one to pay the price. I'm sorry. He said. Leah closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I can't do this anymore. You don't have to. It's done. He's going to jail. He's not getting out this time. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Assault with a deadly weapon. Breaking and entering. Violation of parole. He's looking at 10 years minimum. Leah opened her eyes. And when he gets out, Daniel didn't answer. Vincent Mora was taken to Ashford County Hospital under police guard. The knife wound wasn't deep. Leah had stabbed him in the side. Missing any vital organs, but it was enough to keep him there overnight. Daniel stayed at the safe house until a new patrol unit arrived. Then drove to the hospital. Vincent was handcuffed to the bed, an IV in his arm. When Daniel walked in, Vincent turned his head and smiled. Come to gloat, Vincent asked. Come to make sure you understand what's about to happen. I already know. Assault, breaking and entering, blah, blah, blah. I'll be out in 5 years. Try 10. And that's if you're lucky. Vincent's smile widened. Doesn't matter. I've got time. And when I get out, I'll still be here. She'll still be here. And we'll pick up right where we left off. Daniel stepped closer to the bed. No, you won't. Because the second you're released, I'm going to be waiting, and if you so much as look in her direction, I will find a reason to put you back inside. Every parking ticket, every jaywalking violation, every breath you take wrong, I will make your life a living hell. Vincent laughed. You can't do that. Watch me. Vincent's smile faded. You're obsessed with her. I'm doing my job? No, you're not. You're in love with her. Daniel felt his fist clench. He forced himself to relax. Believe whatever you want. It doesn't change the outcome. Vincent stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, She's not worth it. You know, all this effort, all this risk, and for what? A woman who can't even take care of herself. Daniel turned and walked toward the door. Vincent's voice followed him. She'll leave you soon as this is over, soon as she doesn't need you anymore. She'll disappear. That's what she does. She uses people and throws them away. Daniel stopped at the door, turned around. You know the difference between you and me? I don't need her to need me. I just need her to be safe. And she is, so you've already lost. He walked out before Vincent could respond. The DA filed formal charges the next day. Assault with a deadly weapon, breaking and entering with intent to commit bodily harm, stalking, violation of parole. The bail hearing was set for the following week. Daniel sat in Margaret Fallon's office at Mercy General, going over the timeline. So, he's in custody. Margaret said, For how long pending trial? Could be months. And after that, depends on the jury. But with the evidence we've got, he's looking at significant time. Margaret nodded. What about Leah? She's going to need time. Therapy. Probably. Support. She's got the job waiting for her whenever she's ready. And I'm authorizing extended medical leave with full pay. That's generous. Margaret leaned back in her chair. It's the least we can do. We failed her. Officer Cross. From the moment she started working here, we should have noticed. Should have helped. We didn't. So now we make it right. Better late than never. Maybe. But it shouldn't have taken a near-death experience to open our eyes. Daniel left the hospital and drove to the safe house. Leah was in the kitchen, making sandwiches. Jamie and Emma were at the table. Coloring. How are you holding up? Daniel asked. Leah didn't look up. I'm fine. You want to talk about what happened? No. Leah, I said no. She set down the knife and turned to face him. I don't want to relive it. I don't want to process it. I don't want therapy or counseling or any of that. I just want to move on. You can't just bury it. Watch me. Jamie looked up from his coloring. Mom, are we going home soon? Leah hesitated. I don't know. Baby, I miss my room. I know. Emma tugged on Leah's sleeve. Can we go back to school soon? Daniel pulled out a chair and sat down. The apartment's still a crime scene, but Eddie's willing to help repair the damage once it's cleared. You could be back in a week? Maybe 2. Leah crossed her arms. And then what? We just pretend everything's normal, no. But you start rebuilding. I've been rebuilding my whole life. I'm tired of it. Then don't rebuild. Build something new. Leah stared at him. What's that supposed to mean? It means you've got options now. The hospital job, the promotion, People who care about you, you don't have to go back to the way things were. And if I want to, then that's your choice. But don't make it because you think it's the only option. Leah looked away. I need some air. She walked outside. Daniel stayed at the table with the kids. Jamie spoke without looking up. Is he really gone? Yeah. He's gone. For good. For a long time. Jamie nodded slowly. Then he went back to coloring. 3 days later, the bail hearing happened. Daniel sat in the courtroom next to the assistant DA, a sharp woman in her 30s, named Rachel Ortiz. Vincent was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He looked thinner, paler. The stab wound had left him moving stiffly. The judge, a no-nonsense man in his 60s named Harold Kemp, reviewed the charges. Mr. Mora, you're facing multiple counts of assault, breaking and entering, stalking, and violation of parole. How do you plead? Vincent's public defender stood up. Not guilty. Your Honor. Noted. We'll now hear arguments regarding bail. Rachel stood. Your Honor, the defendant has a history of violent behavior toward the victim. He's violated parole. He's escalated his attacks. And he's demonstrated clear intent to cause harm. We're requesting that bail be denied. The public defender, a tired-looking man named Gary Mills, stood. Your Honor, my client has cooperated with authorities since his arrest. He has no means to flee, no passport, and strong ties to the community. Strong ties. Rachel interrupted. He's been living in a motel and stalking a woman for weeks. That's not community ties. That's predatory behavior. Judge Kemp held up a hand. I've read the reports. I've seen the evidence. Mr. Mora, do you have anything to say for yourself? Vincent stood slowly. Your Honor, I made mistakes. I know that, but I'm not a monster. I just wanted to talk to her, to explain. Explain what Rachel snapped. How you broke into her apartment with a knife, how you assaulted a police officer, how you cornered her in a bedroom. That's enough. Counselor, Judge Kemp said. He looked at Vincent. Sit down. Vincent sat. The judge was silent for a moment, reviewing his notes. Then he said, bail is denied. Mr. Mora will remain in custody pending trial. Vincent's face went red. He started to stand, but the bailiff pushed him back down. This is bullshit. Vincent said, she's lying. One more word, and I'll add contempt to your charges. Judge Kemp said, get him out of here. The bailiffs led Vincent out. He looked back at Daniel as he left, and his expression was pure hatred. Rachel turned to Daniel. That went well? Yeah. For now? You think he'll cause trouble? He's already caused trouble. I'm just hoping the walls hold. That night, Daniel drove to the safe house to deliver the news. Leah was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Bail was denied. He said. Leah exhaled slowly. How long until the trial? 3 months. Maybe 4. And then he goes away for a long time. Leah pulled the blanket tighter. I'll believe it when I see it. Daniel sat down beside her. You don't trust the system. Why would I? It's failed me before. This time is different. You keep saying that because it's true. Leah looked at him. What happens when the trial's over? When he's locked up and you don't need to protect me anymore? I don't protect you because I need to. I do it because I want to. Why? Daniel thought about how to answer. Then he said, because you remind me that there are still people worth fighting for. Leah's eyes filled with tears. She looked away quickly, wiping them. I don't know how to thank you. She said, you don't have to. Yes. I do. You risked everything, your job, your safety for someone you barely know. I know you well enough. Do you? Daniel met her eyes. Yeah, I do. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set. Then Leah stood up. I'm going back to work tomorrow, she said. You sure you're ready? No, but I can't hide forever. You're not hiding. You're recovering. Same thing. It's not. Leah smiled faintly. You're stubborn. You know that I've been told. She went inside. Daniel stayed on the porch for a while longer, thinking about everything that had happened and everything still to come. Then his phone buzzed. A text from the county jail. Vincent Mora was involved in an altercation with another inmate. He's been moved to solitary. Daniel stared at the message, then called the jail. What happened? He asked. The guard on duty, a woman named Stevens, sighed. He started a fight in the cafeteria. Claimed another inmate was threatening him. By the time we pulled them apart, Mora had a broken nose, and the other guy had a fractured jaw. Who started it? Hard to say. Mora's claiming self-defense. Put him in solitary and keep him there. I don't want him near anyone. Already done. Daniel hung up and sat there for a moment. Then he stood and walked to his car. He drove to the jail and asked to see Vincent. They brought him into the interview room. His nose was taped. Both eyes blackened. He sat down slowly, moving like every bone hurt. What do you want? Vincent asked. To make sure you understand something, I'm done listening to you. Then just listen. You're going to spend the next few months in a cell, and after that, you're going to spend the next 10 years in a prison. And when you get out, if you get out, I will still be here. Waiting? Vincent laughed, then winced. You really think you scare me? No. But I think you're smart enough to know when you've lost. Vincent leaned forward. I haven't lost anything. Yeah, you have. You lost Leah. You lost your freedom. And you lost whatever dignity you had left. Vincent's expression darkened. She's the one who should be in here. Not me. For what? Defending herself. For ruining my life. Daniel stood up. You ruined your own life. She just refused to go down with you. He walked to the door. Vincent's voice stopped him. She'll never be free of me. Vincent said, no matter how far she runs, no matter how many cops she hides behind, I'll always be there. In her head, in her nightmares. Daniel turned around. Maybe, but you'll never touch her again. And that's all that matters. He left before Vincent could respond. Outside, he sat in his car and called Leah. I need to tell you something, he said when she answered. What? Vincent's not going to stop. Even from jail. He's going to try to hurt you. Through lawyers. Through phone calls. Through whatever means he has. And I can't protect you from all of it. Leah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know, but I can promise you this. He will never touch you again. He will never get close. And if he tries, I will make sure he regrets it. Thank you. Leah said softly. One more thing. What? You're stronger than him. You always have been. Don't forget that. Leah's voice cracked. I'll try. They hung up. Daniel sat in the parking lot, staring at the jail, and thought about all the ways this could still go wrong. Then his phone rang again. It was Rachel Ortiz. We've got a problem? She said. We've got a problem, she said. Daniel gripped the phone tighter. What kind of problem? Vincent's lawyer is filing a motion to dismiss. Claims the evidence was obtained illegally. Says the text messages can't be verified as coming from his phone. The surveillance footage was installed without proper warrant. And the knife has no prints. Tying it directly to him. That's garbage. I know what we've got. But Gary Mills is good at finding loopholes. If the judge agrees, half our case disappears. Daniel hit the steering wheel. When's the hearing? Tomorrow morning. Nine, M, I'll be there. He hung up and sat there for a moment, trying to think. Then he called Eddie Ruiz. I need you to pull the original security footage. Daniel said, every frame from the night of the break-in, timestamps, metadata, everything. Why? Because Vincent's lawyer is trying to get it thrown out. I need proof. It was installed legally. I've got the work order signed by the property manager. Get me copies. Tonight, on it. Daniel's next call was to the phone company. He needed the records showing the text messages originated from Vincent's number, not some spoofed line. The representative told him it would take 24 hours minimum. I don't have 24 hours. Daniel said, I need it by tomorrow morning. Sir, I understand the urgency, but this is a criminal case involving assault and stalking. The victim's life is at stake. I need those records. A pause. Then, let me see what I can do. Daniel hung up and drove back to the safe house. It was nearly midnight when he arrived. The lights were off except for the porch. Leah was still outside. Same spot. Same blanket. You should be sleeping. He said, It can't. Nightmares. Just thoughts. Daniel sat down beside her. Vincent's lawyer is trying to get the evidence thrown out. Leah's expression didn't change. Of course he is. We're fighting it. But I need you to be prepared for the possibility that this goes sideways. It always goes sideways. Not this time. Leah turned to look at him. You can't promise that. No. But I can promise I'll fight until there's nothing left to fight with. She studied his face for a long moment. Then she said, Why do you care so much? I already told you. No. The real reason. Daniel leaned back against the railing. My mom worked herself to death because nobody cared enough to help. And when she finally collapsed, the people who should have been there weren't. I was 15. And I watched her fade away in a hospital bed while strangers made excuses. I swore I'd never let that happen to someone else if I could stop it. Leah's eyes were wet. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just let me finish what I started. She nodded and pulled the blanket tighter. The hearing started at 9 sharp. Daniel sat in the gallery with Eddie beside him. A folder of documents on his lap. Rachel Ortiz was at the prosecutor's table, looking calm but tense. Vincent sat beside Gary Mills, bruises still visible on his face. Judge Kemp entered, and everyone stood. Let's get started, Kemp said, settling into his seat. Mr. Mills, you've filed a motion to suppress evidence. Make your case. Mills stood, adjusting his glasses. Your Honor, the prosecution's case relies heavily on text messages, surveillance footage, and physical evidence obtained under questionable circumstances. The text messages cannot be definitively tied to my client's phone without verification from the carrier, which has not been provided. The surveillance footage was installed without a warrant and may violate my client's Fourth Amendment rights. And the knife recovered at the scene has no fingerprints linking it to Mr. Mora. Rachel stood immediately. Your Honor, the surveillance footage was installed on private property with the consent of the property owner. The text messages are currently being verified by the carrier, and those records will be available within hours. As for the knife, it was found at the scene of a crime my client committed, breaking and entering, which gives us probable cause. The property owner gave consent under duress. Mills argued, my client was already being harassed by law enforcement at that point, which taints any so-called consent. Judge Kemp looked at Eddie. Mr. Ruiz, you installed the security system. Eddie stood. Yes. Your Honor, on whose authority? The property manager of Bridgeport Apartments signed a work order authorizing installation. I have the documentation here. Eddie handed the folder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Kemp reviewed it in silence. This appears to be an order. Kemp said, the property manager had legal authority to approve security installations. Motion to suppress the footage is denied. Mills didn't flinch. What about the text messages, Miss Ortiz? Do you have carrier verification? Rachel glanced at Daniel. He shook his head slightly. The records hadn't come through yet. We're awaiting final confirmation from the carrier. Your Honor. But we have the original messages and metadata showing they originated from a phone registered to Vincent Mora. That's circumstantial. Mills said, anyone could have sent those messages using a spoofed number. Not with the metadata we have. Rachel countered. The messages were sent from towers consistent with Mr. B. Mora's known locations at the times they were sent. Judge Kemp looked at his notes. I'm inclined to allow the messages as evidence pending carrier verification. If that verification doesn't arrive before trial, we'll revisit this. Anything else? Mr. Mills, the knife. Your Honor, without prints. There's no direct link. The knife was found at a crime scene where your client unlawfully entered and assaulted the victim. That's enough for me. Motion denied. Mills sat down. Jaw tight. Vincent leaned over and whispered something. Mills shook his head. One more thing. Rachel said, we'd like to submit additional evidence testimony from the victim, Leah Carter, regarding a pattern of abuse and harassment spanning over a decade. Objection. Mills said, that's prejudicial. Past conduct isn't relevant to the current charges. It establishes motive and pattern. Rachel argued, Mr. Mora has a documented history of violence toward Miss Beatty. Carter, that history directly supports the charges he's facing now. Judge Kemp considered this. I'll allow the testimony at trial, but will limit it to incidents directly relevant to establishing pattern and motive. Understood, yes. Your Honor, Rachel said. The hearing ended 20 minutes later. As they filed out, Vincent caught Daniel's eye and smiled. Daniel didn't react. Just walked past. Outside, Rachel pulled him aside. We need those phone records. I'm working on it. Work faster. If they don't come through before trial, we're vulnerable. Daniel called the phone company again. This time, a supervisor answered. The records are being processed, she said. We should have them by end of business today. I need them in 2 hours. Sir, 2 hours. Please. A long pause. I'll expedite it. Daniel hung up and drove to the hospital. He needed to talk to Leah about testifying. He found her in Margaret's office. Leah was sitting across from Margaret. Signing papers? What's this? Daniel asked. Margaret looked up. Leah's officially accepting the supervisor position. She starts next week. Leah set down the pen. Assuming I survive the trial, you'll survive. Margaret said firmly. And when you do, you'll have a job that pays you what you're worth. Daniel pulled up a chair. I need to talk to you about something. Leah's expression tightened. What now? Rachel wants you to testify. About everything, the abuse, the stalking, the pattern of violence. No. Leah? I said no. I'm not getting up in front of a courtroom and reliving the worst years of my life while he sits there watching. It's the only way to show the jury who he really is. They already know who he is. He broke into a house with a knife. Mills is going to paint him as a victim, as someone who made mistakes but isn't a monster. Your testimony changes that. Leah stood up. Find another way. There is no other way. She walked to the window and stared out at the parking lot. I've spent 10 years trying to forget what he did to me. And now you want me to stand up and describe it in detail. I want you to make sure he never does it again. To you, or anyone else. Leah turned around, and her eyes were blazing. You don't get to ask this of me. You don't get to decide what I'm strong enough to handle. You're right. I don't, but the jury does, and if you don't testify, they might let him walk. Then let them. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. Margaret stood up. Both of you, sit down. They sat. Margaret folded her hands on the desk. Leah, I understand why you don't want to testify. Nobody would. But Officer Cross is right. Your testimony could be the difference between conviction and acquittal. That doesn't mean you have to do it. But you should think carefully before you decide. Leah looked at the floor. What if I get up there and fall apart? Then you fall apart. Margaret said, and the jury sees a real person dealing with real trauma. That's not weakness. That's truth. Leah closed her eyes. I need time to think. You've got until tomorrow. Daniel said, trial starts in 3 days. The phone records arrived at 4 p.m. Daniel reviewed them in his car. Cross-referencing every text message with the tower data, everything matched. The messages had been sent from Vincent's phone, from locations consistent with his movements. He forwarded everything to Rachel with a single word. Got it. Her response came immediately. Thank God. That night, Daniel went back to the safe house. Leah was in the kitchen, making dinner. Jamie and Emma were setting the table. You decide? Daniel asked. Leah didn't look up. I'll testify. You sure? No, but I'll do it anyway. Daniel nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might change my mind. You won't. How do you know? Because you're not the kind of person who runs when it matters. Leah finally looked at him. You don't know me as well as you think. Maybe, but I know enough. The trial began on a Tuesday. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, spectators, hospital staff who'd come to support Leah. Daniel sat in the front row. Karen was beside him, holding Emma's hand. Jamie sat on Leah's other side, looking small and scared. Vincent was brought in wearing a suit that didn't fit right. He'd shaved, cleaned himself up, looked almost respectable. The jury was seated 7 women, 5 men, ranging in age from early 20s to late 60s. Rachel had fought for that composition, arguing that women would be more sympathetic to Leah's experience. Judge Kemp called the court to order. Opening statements. Ms. Ortiz. Rachel stood and walked to the jury box. This is a case about control. About a man who believed he owned another person and was willing to destroy her rather than let her go. Vincent Mora didn't just break into Leah Carter's home. He broke into her life. He stalked her. He terrorized her. And when she finally found the strength to move forward, he tried to take that away too. Over the next few days, you'll hear testimony from Ms. Carter, from law enforcement, and from witnesses who saw firsthand what Mr. H.E. Mora is capable of. And when you do, I believe you'll agree that he deserves to be held accountable for every single thing he's done. She sat down. Mills stood. My client made mistakes. Mills began. He'll be the first to admit that, but mistakes aren't the same as crimes. Vincent Mora loved Leah Carter. He still does. And when she left him, he struggled. He made poor choices. But that doesn't make him a monster. The prosecution wants you to believe this is a story about control and violence. It's not. It's a story about a man who lost his way and a woman who won't forgive him. You'll hear a lot of emotional testimony in the coming days. But I ask you to look past the emotion and focus on the facts, because the facts will show you that my client is guilty of being human flawed. Yes, but not dangerous. He sat down. Daniel felt sick. The prosecution called its first witness, Officer Lisa Grant, who'd been first on scene at Bridgeport the night of the break-in. She described the destruction, the knife, the note. Mills cross-examined her briefly, focusing on the lack of fingerprints. So you found a knife, but you can't prove my client held it. Correct. And you found a note, but you can't prove he wrote it. The handwriting matches samples we obtained from his previous arrest records. Matches. Or is similar to. Lisa hesitated. Similar. No further questions. The second witness was Eddie Ruiz, who testified about installing the security system and the footage it captured. Mills attacked the timeline. You installed this system after my client was already under investigation? Correct. Yes. So it's possible you were specifically targeting him. I was protecting Ms. Carter. That's not what I asked. Objection. Rachel said, argumentative. Sustained. The third witness was Marcus Webb. He described Leah's dedication, her struggles, and the day she collapsed. Mills barely cross-examined him. You never witnessed any interaction between Miss Say, Carter and my client. Did you? No. Thank you. Nothing further. Then Rachel called Leah to the stand. The courtroom went silent as Leah walked to the witness box. She looked pale, fragile. When she sat down, her hands were shaking. Rachel approached gently. Ms. Carter, can you tell the jury how you know Vincent Mora? Leah's voice was barely audible. We were together. A long time ago. How long? 6 years. Maybe 7. And during that time, did Mr. Mora ever hurt you? Leah nodded. You need to answer out loud for the record. Yes. He hurt me. Can you describe the first time Leah closed her eyes? We'd been arguing about something stupid. I don't even remember what. And I turned to walk away. And he grabbed my arm and twisted it. I heard it snap. Someone in the gallery gasped. What happened next? Rachel asked. He drove me to the hospital. Told them I'd fallen. And I went along with it because I was scared. Did he hurt you again after that? Yes. How many times? I don't know. I stopped counting. Rachel walked back to her table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence hospital records documenting Ms. Carter's injuries over a 6-year period. Objection. Mills said, relevance. It establishes a pattern of abuse. Rachel said, overruled. I'll allow it. Rachel handed the folder to the jury. They passed it around. And Daniel watched their faces change as they read, Ms. Carter. Why didn't you leave sooner? Rachel asked. Leah looked at Vincent. He was staring at her with an expression Daniel couldn't read. Because I thought it was my fault. Leah said quietly. And because he told me if I left, he'd kill me. Do you believe he would have? Yes. Why? Because he said it every day. And because I saw what he was capable of. Rachel let that sit for a moment. Then she said, fast forward to 3 weeks ago. You were walking to work in the middle of the night. Why? Because my car was broken and I couldn't afford to fix it. And I couldn't lose my job. Did you know Mr. Mora was back in town? No. When did you find out? When Officer Cross told me someone had broken into my apartment? What did you feel when you heard that Leah's voice broke? Terror. Rachel walked closer. Why? Because I knew it was him. I knew he'd found me. What happened? The day he broke into the safe house. Leah took a shaky breath. I was in the bedroom with my kids. I heard glass break. I told them to hide in the closet. Then he came in. What did he say? He said I belonged to him. That I'd never get away. That he'd make sure of it. What did you do? I grabbed a piece of glass from the broken window. And when he came at me, I stabbed him. Were you trying to kill him? No. I was trying to survive. Rachel nodded. No further questions. Mills stood for cross-examination. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, trying to look sympathetic. Ms. Carter, you've been through a lot. I understand that, but I have to ask, did my client ever explicitly threaten you in writing, in a text or email? No. Did he ever tell anyone else he was going to hurt you? I don't know. So, all we have is your word that he threatened you. Yes, and you admit you stabbed him. To defend myself, but you stabbed him. That's a fact. Yes. No further questions. Leah stepped down. She looked like she might collapse. Daniel met her at the gate and guided her back to her seat. The prosecution rested. Mills called only one witness. Vincent himself. Vincent took the stand looking contrite, almost gentle. Mills started easy. Mr. Mora. Did you love Leah Carter? Yes. I still do. Did you ever intend to hurt her? No. Never. Then why did you go to the safe house? Because I wanted to talk to her. To apologize? To make things right. And what happened when you got there? She attacked me. I tried to defend myself, but she had a weapon. I didn't. Did you bring a knife to the house? No. Then where did it come from? I don't know. Maybe it was already there. Rachel stood for cross-examination. She walked straight up to Vincent. No hesitation. Mr. Mora, you testified that you wanted to apologize. Is that correct? Yes. Then why did you break the window to get in? Vincent hesitated. The door was locked. So you broke in. I needed to talk to her. And the knife that was found at the scene, the same knife from Ms. Carter's apartment, that was just a coincidence. I told you. I don't know where it came from. Rachel pulled out a photo. This is surveillance footage from the night you broke into Ms. Carter's apartment. You're clearly visible holding a knife. Same knife. Same serrated edge. You're telling this jury that's not you. Vincent's face went red. That could be anyone. It's you. Mr. Mora. And you know it. Objection. Mills said, argumentative. Withdrawn. Rachel stepped back. You also testified that you went to the safe house to apologize. But you didn't knock. You didn't call. You broke in through a window and cornered Miss Carter in a bedroom. Does that sound like an apology to you? I was desperate. You were violent. Just like you've always been. Objection. Sustained. Ms. Ortiz. Rein it. Rachel nodded. I'll rephrase. Mr. Mora, have you ever been arrested for assaulting Ms. Carter before? Yes. But I paid for that. Twice. Correct, yes. And both times, she ended up in the hospital. It wasn't yes or no yes. No further questions. Vincent stepped down looking shaken. Mills tried to salvage it, in closing arguments, painting Vincent as a broken man who'd made mistakes. But Rachel's closing was devastating. Vincent Mora wants you to believe he's a victim. She said that he's just a man who loved too much. But love doesn't break bones. Love doesn't send threatening texts. Love doesn't break into someone's home with a knife. This isn't love. This is control. And it's time someone held him accountable. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the foreman stood on the charge of assault with a deadly weapon. We find the defendant guilty. On the charge of breaking and entering with intent, guilty. On the charge of stalking, guilty. On the charge of violation of parole, guilty. Vincent's face went white. The courtroom erupted. Judge Kemp slammed his gavel. Order. Sentencing is set for 2 weeks from today. Mr. Mora, you'll remain in custody. Court is adjourned. As they led Vincent out, he looked back at Leah one last time. She met his eyes and didn't look away. 2 weeks later, sentencing happened in the same courtroom. Judge Kemp reviewed the pre-sentence report, then looked at Vincent. "Mr. Mora, you've been convicted of serious crimes. Crimes that demonstrate a pattern of violence and disregard for the safety of others. Do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Vincent stood. "I'm sorry. For everything." Kemp didn't look impressed. "Ms. Carter, would you like to make a statement?" Leah stood. She walked to the podium, hands steady now. "For 10 years, I lived in fear of this man," she said. "I changed my name. I moved cities. I did everything I could to disappear. And it didn't matter, because he decided I belonged to him. And nothing I did would change that. But I'm standing here today because I finally learned something. I don't belong to him. I don't belong to anyone. I belong to myself. And no matter what sentence you give him, that's never going to change." She sat down. Judge Kemp nodded. "Mr. Mora, I'm sentencing you to 12 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for at least 8. Additionally, upon release, you'll be subject to a lifetime restraining order prohibiting any contact with Ms. Lyons, Carter, or her family. Bailiff, remove the defendant." Vincent was let out without looking back. Outside the courthouse, Leah stood on the steps with Jamie and Emma. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Daniel stood beside her, blocking the worst of it. "Ms. Carter, how do you feel?" Leah looked at the crowd. Then she said, "I feel free." 3 months later, Leah walked into Mercy General wearing a supervisor's badge. Her office was small, but hers desk, chair, window overlooking the parking lot. On the wall was a framed photo of Jamie and Emma. Marcus knocked on the door. "Got a minute?" "Sure." He sat down. "I wanted to say congratulations." "Officially?" "Thanks. You've come a long way." Leah smiled faintly. "Yeah, I have. The team's excited to work under you. They know you'll actually care,